Welcome back. We've got a special episode of Cube coverage this week covering the Sydney Cube tournament. We're skipping ahead to the semi-finals of round one. So this is the Unsleeved Cube, Matt versus Ben. We're in the semi-finals, and this is just the qualification to get into round two. So we're up on white-black versus what looks like mono-black. Some sacrifice synergies on the left and some death triggers on the right. So we're going to see some very similar looking cards on both sides. Oh, and Matt's got a 3-color brew going. So he's got the powerful gold card here. Very hard to interact with, and protection, a little bit of evasion that can matter quite a bit in this cube. I'm a big fan of evasive creatures. And Ben setting up with some very defensive plays. Gaining life, playing a 2-3, some creatures that block well. And similar out of Matt, so this aristocrat might be representing a lot of the damage that Matt can deal this game. Both players settling in on a very slow game plan. And the rate on the aristocrat, Matt is only cashing in each creature for 2 damage unless he can get an aura on it. So he'll have to find some other way of punching through. Ben is a big fan of these black recursive kind of using creatures with enters and death triggers. Trying to maximize his value here. And so he is starting to suit up the aristocrat. At 3 damage apiece, he stands a real shot of killing Ben with just the aristocrat. And there's very little Ben can do to stop it short of getting on the offense and exhausting Matt's overall resources. So I'll see if Ben's got something more aggressive to do. And the Butcher gets his synergies going. I think he's got some consideration for what's worth killing and whether there's much difference between targeting the aristocrat and just targeting a creature he'd be sacrificing. So it looks like Butcher targets the 2-2, the Festering Mummy targets the aristocrat, and the aristocrat sacrifices the 2-2 to protect itself. And this time, coming in without protection, so Ben's got the option to chump block. But not what he wants to be doing in the long term. The 3-3 Ben's put down is quite large on this board. That's got to be one of his better ways of exhausting Matt's resources, because while... Oh, and a Grey Merchant of Asphodel. That is a ton of damage. Drains 6 life. And now Ben's good to send them in. Matt's got this 2-1 he'd like to involve in a block. He doesn't want to be trading off creatures too aggressively. And with all of his creatures at 1 toughness, it's quite hard for him to set up a board stall here. He can blunt Ben's damage in the short term, but in the long term, he's just kind of losing ground here. So, loses the 2-1, makes a 1-1. And he might need to be holding back the aristocrat for a couple turns to let things get clogged up enough and have enough creatures to start going on the offensive again. From Ben's point of view, quite likely he's got a way to recur this Grey Merchant, so he'd love to find a way to trade it off in combat, and then he can recur it and drain for tons of life again. So Matt goes for the easy block, takes 3, goes down to 6, which can be a problem if Ben can recur the Grey Merchant. And here, Ossuary Rat's generally a pretty good card. Any kind of removal is rough here, as he really wants to take care of the aristocrat, but he's always just trading for Matt's worst creature. So we're in an attrition game in the sense that Ben is trying to beat Matt through raw numbers of creatures. And so far, it seems to be working. So, still happy to send in for the chump attacks. Matt can't really afford to be blocking 1/1s with the aristocrat. So, blocks the rats, sacks the 1/1, trades off the other 1/1, and takes 1 damage. And the Drainpipe Vermin is going to nab a card from his hand. Here's Ghoul Razor. Big difference in quality between these two cards to get one at random. Oh, and he gets the Festering Mummy. So, some background here. The Unsleeved Pauper Cube, we've had it on camera quite a few times. It's one of the more tweaked and played cubes. The event is the Sydney Cube Tournament, so round 1, players play in a variety of cubes to make it into the top 16, and then top 16 we play 4 rounds of single elimination vintage cube. So they're going at it here for a shot at getting into the vintage cube. Matt's down to 2 life, but he's starting to stabilize. Ben's starting to run out of creatures to throw into the machine. And the 3/3, quite a good blocker against the Grey Merchant because he can block it without killing it. He's got to have some consideration to playing the whole game without ever killing the Grey Merchant, as letting Ben recur it will be game over. I think Ben would have loved to pick it up with the Ghoul Razor, but very hard to get it into the graveyard. And Matt, without a clear path to getting ahead, but also in a bit of a rough spot in terms of the ongoing game, he's got to be wary of suddenly getting killed by an extra activation of the Grey Merchant or some other way of pushing through the last 2 damage. And here we see this pacifism effect on the Grey Merchant, making sure that it's not going to be... he's not going to be forced to kill it in combat. And getting things moving with the Cartel Aristocrat. And no attack with the Festering Ghoul there. If Matt blocked with the 2-2, Ben could have a trade there, but he's going to keep it around for now. Oh, on a 6-4, this is a much more relevant threat to start closing the game out. But it's rough against these value black decks. Yeah, Ben's happy to chump block here, find something to recur. So just going for value with the Ghoul Razor. The other route would be using the Silumgar Butcher to kill his Grey Merchant and find some way to recur it. If he can... so he's down to just the Butcher in graveyard, so this is nice. The Ghoul Razor lets him get both cards back. And now if Ben can find another way to recur a creature from his graveyard, which very likely he's got one of those, he's going to be able to get back the Grey Merchant and end the game. Matt's living on borrowed time here. This is a nice threat. He can at least get an attack in this turn. Has to leave 2 creatures back to avoid dying. And he's playing it safe, leaving back the Viashino as well. Here's the Driver and a Putrid Ghoul, so Ben would love to be chump blocking at this point. If he can block with the Ghoul Razor and then block with the Driver of the Dead, then he can recur the Ghoul Razor, recur the Grey Merchant, win the game. So we might see some suicide attacks. This would also set it up. But he's taking out the Viashino first. And he's just got lethal on board, so a safer route to victory. Ben takes game 1. Through the power of the small, shitty creatures that are in abundant supply in this cube. So having a tough time deciding what to discard. And Matt's got his sacrifice outlet down. He can turn it into a 4-4. It'll be a good way to get things moving on this board. Oh, and Tinker's Tote is a great combo with it. Gets 1+1 counter for free, so he can really suit up this Salvager and start getting to work. We'll see how much he's willing to put into one creature and risk getting it removed. So sacrifices the artifact and one creature immediately, so it's up to a 4/4. Doesn't have a great attack on this board just yet, but he's going to keep suiting it up. So that's at least one more counter. Alright, so feeds it the tote and the training construct. Construct trigger brings it up to a 5/5. Ben cannot double block it, but he can start racing back with his own creatures. And that's very much looking like the angle he's got to take this game. So Liliana's Shade much better on offense than defense. And Matt's got the fixing for his third color. So Liliana's Shade, a card that can put Matt under a bit of a clock. It's really hard to interact with over a longer game as long as Ben's got mana to spend on it. You usually want to be attacking the controller of it. So he's going to keep getting to work with the salvager and angling to find something with 3 toughness to block Ben's other creatures. I think we just missed a Liliana's Shade trigger earlier. Fixing that up now. So Matt's got a removal spell. It's a tough choice what to point it at. He might want to hold off on killing the Shade in case there's a more relevant target. As Shade is quite a slow threat. So yeah, not pulling the trigger on that just yet. He can pretty safely suit up the salvagers to a 6/6 here. Threaten to kill Ben in 3 turns unless he starts jump blocking. And not feeding the salvager just yet. Looks like the Doom Dissenter is more valuable as a chump blocker. Especially with the game coming down to a race, he's got to be a bit wary of Ben sending in the Shade and just spending all of his mana on it. Oh, and Mortician Beetle is an unexpected hoser, so Matt cannot be sacrificing creatures very well now, or else he'll be growing Ben's Beetle. As that one counts sacrifices on both sides of the field. I wonder if that one was brought in from the sideboard. So, ready for the Eviscerate. Ben had committed quite a lot of mana into being able to block with the Shade, so that wastes quite a lot of his mana. Looks like he's got spells in hand he would have rather deployed. And too late to sacrifice more things to the Salvager at this point. Just going to have to send it in as a 5/5. He's pretty happy if Ben goes for the triple block. And Ben's really just got to find an answer for this huge Salvager. So Matt even just sending in the Dissenter as a chump attack. He'd rather be letting it die for no value than getting a counter on the Beetle. And Ben trades off both of his creatures for a chump block and a trade there. He's got a big play here. So Ossuary Rats looks like he needed to fill up the graveyard for that trigger. So at least 5 creatures in graveyard, able to take out the large creature, and now combat is much more in Ben's favor. Matt was leaning a lot on that large creature, and he doesn't have much else in the way of resources. Looks like he's got the 7 mana artifact creature. If he holds on for a turn, he can start deploying it. And Ben, happy to trade off there, keep his life total high. Feeling confident about the state of the board at this point. Oh, and a Gravedigger. Gravedigger is a fantastic top deck as the game goes long like this. Ben's very happy to pay the extra mana to keep getting value, start looping and chaining his best cards. Speaking of looping, Undertaker is... Oh, this is a huge life swing. Drains for 5. Ben's looking well ahead, and the Undertaker can give Ben some serious card selection. Recurring cards like the Ossuary Rats and the Grey Merchant. And even just recycling the Gravedigger is... Ben's essentially drawing all his best cards at this point. Thanks to the Undertaker. So this is nice. Cashes in a swamp for the Shade. Shade draws him another card. Next turn he can feed the swamp to the Undertaker again. Continuing to fill the board, and pretty soon he's going to be able to go on the offensive. And without a big creature in play, Matt really can't afford to be trading off real resources for Ben's creatures. It's just so cheap for Ben to recur them, and he benefits from having them in the graveyard. So, takes 6 damage here. He's got the 7th land. Can't afford to send it in as an attack. And the Liliana's Shade, also a big problem. So with this much mana, Ben can afford to send everything in. Matt is forced to put something in front of the shade. He can't afford to kill the grey merchant, so he'll have to chump block it or just take 2 from there. So we're looking at a lot of chump blocks, growing the 9th Bridge Patrol. Goes down to 1. And Ben checking if he's got something more to occur. The rats is always a pretty good option. Takes out the 6-4. 9th Bridge Patrol goes up to a 5-5, but Matt just simply doesn't have enough creatures to block, and Ben wins the semi-finals. On to Andre versus Ben. So in terms of the tournament structure, this is just a match for pride, as both of them are already qualified for round 2. But this is a good opportunity to show off the decks that they've drafted. Andre going for something a little more unconventional compared to what we've seen out of the Unsleeved cube. Doing something quite blasphemous by sleeving the cards up. And doing some card filtering with Sinister Starfish. This is a very powerful card filtering spell. The extra value it gives turn after turn represents a bunch of extra cards, and the 0-3 body is a relevant blocker. So it's kind of like the Courser of Crufix of this cube. And speaking of value, so Ben's had a slow start, hasn't been able to make any plays, and Andre's taking the opportunity to make mana, draw cards, do some card filtering. Whatever late game setup he's got, he's going to be able to assemble it. Looks like Andre also very interested in just hitting his land drops. Oh, and sets up the Moldgraph Millipede, which is going to get swatted in response. That is a pretty clean answer. And Andre mills over Urtet. Urtet, one of only 3 rares in the cube. A quite strange tribal build around that I haven't seen in action just yet. So this is a low impact Grey Merchant. Ben just getting on the board. And Andre still happy to pass. He's got a block on the Merchant. Shade is quite a good threat here. It doesn't look like Andre has got any way of closing out the game soon, so Shade represents a way for Ben to gradually work through. And he's got plenty of mana to spare to spend on the Shade. And got the Undertaker set up, so looks like Andre's going to have a tough time dealing with the Shade. He's got to get something proactive going, or else he's just going to be ground out by the Shade plus Undertaker. Can't be stopped by blockers, can't be stopped by most removal spells. And some more card draw and mana production. We see a Ulamog's Crusher in the library there, so that's a good idea of the kind of late game that Andre's building towards. So, Sinister Starfish, unable to block this turn. Andre not willing to let Ben spend mana dealing damage here, so he's going to spend some resources just neutralizing the Shade for a turn. But the pressure's on to get something going for Andre. And looks like he's got a Pit Keeper, so lots of good options to recur here. We have reason to believe Urtet has got some good utility in his deck, but Merkinsmith is the kind of card advantage you want this late in the game. And the Boar is just a big creature, but not a long-term solution against the Liliana's Shade, so I could see him going for Merkinsmith here, as it represents a lot of card advantage. He can tutor up another one and chain them together. And buy him enough time to set up something proactive. Oh, but he's going for the Urtet. So, ready to draw some more Mers. And in with the Shade. Doesn't have a colossal amount of mana to spend on it. So that's 6 damage. Andre's down to 10, but hasn't lost any resources in that exchange. And I think just fishing for a Mer here, he can use the Mers to just assemble chump blockers against the Liliana's Shade, which buys him a lot of time. And then if he can find a way to close out the game. But trying to close out the game against all this recursion and, oh, Greater Sandworm, making a triumphant return. This is one of the best evasive threats in the cube. The evasion really premium here because he does not want to let Ben chump block. And sending in the 2-1, offering up the trade. The Dutiful Attendant has got nothing to recur, so Ben unlikely to trade it off just yet. And Ben's only option currently for blocking the Sandworm is to leave back the Shade, but that wastes a lot of mana and prevents him from getting anywhere on the board. So Ben really wishing he could do some chump blocking here. So far, the Driver of the Dead and the Shade are the only creatures able to block. I could see him going for a double block with them. It costs him a lot of value, but he's got the means to make it up with the Undertaker and all of his Enters, Death, and Recursion abilities. And Andre weighing it up. If he wants to send in the Worm, there's a lot of value to just leaving it back and taxing Ben's mana on threatening to activate the Shade. And that looks like it's what he's going to do. He's got an awful lot of mana held up himself, so Andre must have some kind of instant speed play or mana sink setup. And another blocker. You see the incredible value in being able to ignore these small creatures. Andre's not concerned about attacking with most of his creatures, and the Worm ignores all of them pretty easily. There's a lot Ben's deck could be doing if he could convert these creatures into something meaningful. Another 7 life for Andre. These green gatekeepers have been featuring in a lot of powerful decks lately. So, Andre's got no need to kill the Attendant or the Grey Merchant. Ben would like to just be able to kill them for no value so he can recycle the Grey Merchant. And this is just what he's going to do. So this is a great opportunity for him. So he casualties the Recursion spell. Fails to find off the mills, unfortunately. But he's pretty happy to just have an opportunity to cast the Grey Merchant again. We'll see how many black mana symbols he reckons he can get in play. So currently he's got 6. It would be a drain for 8. That is a pretty significant amount of life to drain. But also by tapping down, he is going shields down on the Liliana's Shade, which represents another 7 life he'd lose regardless, so he plays the Grey Merchant here, gets a lot of damage in to Andre. There's a bit of a bluffing opportunity there to attack with the Shade and see if Andre blocks, but I don't think Ben would be too happy if Andre did block. It would set him back quite a lot of mana for not too much value, so and Andre quite happy to sit back. He's just unlocked the 5th color for Urtet. So he's in no rush to close out this game. He knows that Ben is losing a ton of mana every turn that he's forced to try and play defense against this Greater Sandworm. He's got enough of a buffer that he can afford to take some hits from it now, and he's got real incentive to try and go on the offensive. So if he sends in the Shade, he can threaten to turn it into a 10-10. So Andre's not going to be able to kill it without losing the Sandworm. Oh, the Katobla. So between sniping the Urtet or the Greater Sandworm, he's gone for the Urtet. Shows a lot of respect for that activated ability. And now that he's got the Katoblapa in play, he's got a little bit more ability to block the Sandworm. Still not a great block. So if he pumps the Shade up to a 4/4, then he would have to lose the Shade and something else in a block against the Sandworm. Which is kind of a raw deal, but there's a lot of value in dealing with the Sandworm, as that's one of Andre's best tools for attacking into all of these small recursive creatures. So, goes for the pump and the double block here. The Driver of the Dead still without a target to recur. But with Undertaker here, he can recur the Katoblapa. That can kill the Hippo or anything else that threatens a long game. He might not even need to kill the Hippo here, as his setup is so good at blocking. But I'll take that one out. And finally, sending in for an attack. So Wither on this troll means that blocking with the 2/4 is not a great deal. Andre's getting low enough on resources that Ben might be able to start getting back into an aggressive position. So, Troll persists. Andre's keeping that 2/4, which has a lot of value against Ben's 3/2 and 2/4 attackers. And Andre just presenting another big creature. But with this Katoblapa loop, it's not clear that a creature of any size can really get through Ben's defenses. They've got to set up some amount of evasion or other way of breaking up all of these synergies that Ben's got. And Ben is so happy with his amount of recursion, he's sending in creatures for chump attacks. Quite happy to throw them away for no value just for the opportunity to recur them. And looks like Andre's got a plan. He's going to kill the Grey Merchant. There's the rats to deal with the 2/4. Not enough creatures in graveyard to kill the Lacrocota. And it looks like Ben's managed to neutralize all of Andre's threats. Ben's going to be Grey Merchanting for another 5. Oh, and even more recursion. That's 3 more pips, so he can guarantee a Grey Merchant for 8. So if he plays Liliana's Shade, plays the Grey Merchant. That might be a drain for 9, actually. And Kotoblapa, not shabby either. Now Ben can just get some attacks in the old-fashioned way. Andre's down to 6. If Ben can resolve the Grey Merchant, it's almost certainly going to be lethal next turn. Take a look, and evens it up. Game goes to Ben after a grueling struggle. Looked like he was going to have a lot of trouble with the Urtet and Granite Sandworm, but managed to get his removal going. And Andre's relative lack of evasion really struggled to break through that huge board stall. So starting off with some Mers here. Alima, a bit of a mascot of the cube. Glad to see it's getting its rounds in. And Ben, with a bit of a slow start, hasn't had any of his cheap value creatures yet. Shade does not play defense, so he'll be taking another 2 here. And this is an early millipede. It's going to depend a lot on what Andre mills. That is an alright hit. He's got a 4/4 millipede. So I think Ben pretty happy to send in the Shade here and threaten activation. But starting with the rats. A Scarecrow and a pass. So Ben assessing it's probably too late to snipe a Mana Dork with his flashback on the removal spell. Gonna nab Andre's last card, often a great use of a discard spell. Just not give your opponent a choice. And Ben's gonna keep taking the early chump blocks. He has a lot of use for creatures in graveyard, and his deck, as we saw last game, can struggle to actually get them in the graveyard. So while it's quite unusual to take a chump block this early, he is willing to do it to fuel up his graveyard. And mills the Attendant. That is a way to really chain together recursion abilities if you can get that one out of the graveyard. And looks like, considering if the Shade's going to be on defense, but just going to send it in this turn. Doesn't get much progress, but doesn't cost much mana. And now Ben's got the Undertaker, so he's going to have a lot of selection here. If he recurs the Dutiful Attendant, then it's going to give him a lot of chump blocks to chain together. It's also going to mean that he can afford to leave the Shade back, as he won't be in as much of a rush to get the game over with when he's got a late game engine like that set up. And the Scarecrow is a nice little glue piece, so gives him extra cards for the Undertaker, sends itself to the graveyard. He can actually do a very slow loop by recurring the Scarecrow, turning it into more cards. Very mana efficient, but inefficient. But these kind of loops that scale depend on how much mana you're willing to spend on them they have a lot of value in their flexibility. As if it were a more aggressive opponent, he'd be quite happy to have the Scarecrow as a 1/4 blocker. He's going to get things going here. Takes another discard with the Rat. Nabs the Ulamog's Crusher. That is a very good hit. And especially after seeing how mana hungry Andre's deck can get, it's quite unlikely that he was sandbagging a land there. He'd rather play it out and not get it hit by discard. So Ben had a pretty good guess that he was going to get a real card there. Oh, and it's another big Graveyard Matters creature. Comes in as an 8/8 thanks to the Crusher. Ben's got a lot of ability to chain together chump blocks. He's got the Dutiful Attendant plus Gravedigger Loop now. Oh, he's got a big Grey Merchant. And without the evasion of the Greater Sandworm, it's going to be really hard for Andre to pressure Ben without getting the Grey Merchant in the graveyard. And with the Undertaker, that's a really dangerous place for it to be. He's still drawing to the Sandworm. And these are going to give him a huge life buffer. But without the Sandworm, he's not really making inroads to pressuring Ben's life total. Just passing the turn. Oh, and more recursion spells. So Andre's hand already empty. Ben gets back another graveyard filler. And this is actually a pretty clutch card here, as it's a way for him to sacrifice a creature, which has quite a lot of value with the Grey Merchant stuck on the battlefield. So Ben, I think, will be quite happy to kill off his own Grey Merchant. Swaps the Noble for an Attendant. Just wants to get more value. And he's looping the... There we go, going for exactly that. Ordinarily a bit of a low value target for the Sibzigs, but just getting the Grey Merchant in the graveyard, he's threatening to drain for a ton of life soon. And now that he's not under much duress. He knows Andre can't easily attack without risking losing a lot of value in the long game. So Wither shrinks the dragon a bit. The troll persists. Ben takes some damage, but he's going to gain it back quite soon. And as long as Andre is having to attack on the ground, he's going to get blunted by this Dutiful Attendant, Gravedigger, Grey Merchant loop type setup. And he's trading the Attendant for the Grey Merchant. That's a drain for 9. Andre's down to 6. He can't afford for Grey Merchant to enter the battlefield one more time, which means he's dead if he attacks. From here on out, it's Greater Sandworm or bust. So Ben should be up to 23. We'll see if that comes up. And with the Sibsig, Ben can actually send in... Oh, the Katoblapar. So he snipes the Hippo here. If he sends in the Grey Merchant and the Sibsig, if either one of them dies, he's going to be able to recur the Grey Merchant, and that's going to represent lethal later on. So Andre making some precarious blocks to try not to die instantly. Very much wants to trade with the Undertaker. With these blocks, he's taking 5, losing some of his blockers, so he's going to be facing down lethal next turn, regardless of the Grey Merchant recursion situation. And this is slightly scary for Ben. He is losing a couple of his creatures. There's a risk of getting punished by something here, but it is a pretty smooth route to victory. Andre's only got 1 draw step to get out of it. There's not many cards in the cube that can deal with this much power on board. And he doesn't have to worry about the green gatekeepers, as that one's already in play. Looks like Ben is going to clinch the match. As I mentioned earlier, both these players already qualified for round 2, so nothing but pride on the line, but I think Ben has earned his pride for this one. This is a deck he's been tinkering with in this cube for a while. He knows the ins and outs of it. He's set up some impressive loops. Takes the match. That's round 1 of the Sydney Cube Championship. We'll be back with another video for round 2. So, looking forward to that one. Hope you all enjoyed. And keep an eye out for some high-level Vintage Cube play in round 2.